I know, you are in shock. Your mouth is agape, you're flummoxed, and I'll stand at my audacity because everyone and their mother believes that Eloise Bridgerton is a feminist. She's outspoken, she doesn't conform to societal expectations, she's her own woman. I mean, that's how the show has portrayed her so far, with the stereotypical feminist traits that we are known to look for whenever we hear that a character or the other is a feminist. And sure, maybe you go back and forth with some of her actions and decisions as you try to reconcile how she could possibly be a feminist if she says this or doesn't do that. But then what if I tell you that the reason why Eloise Bridgerton is so confusing is because a lot of these traits that you've associated Eloise's feminism to is also what makes her one of the boys, to be precise, one of the Bridgerton boys. And what if I say that it's the reason as well why her feminism is a bit more me-leaning than a feminism that is more group-focused, for example. And that's the reason why a lot of people find her so confusing. Curious to find out more about what I'm talking about? Well then, keep watching. Now, I'm pretty sure you were confused by the title and thumbnail for this video because the assumption we often have of what a girl who is referred to as one of the boys is someone who is a tomboy or someone who fits so easily with the boys that often we can't tell her apart from them, or at least the boys who are her friends only see her as one of their own. And if you look up oldtrustytvtropes.com for a definition of one of the boys, we are told girls usually spend time with other girls in cliques or sisterhoods. Then there are those who prefer to pal around with guys instead. Traditional schoolgirl pastimes such as playing with dolls and tea time are eschewed in favor of things like baseball or roughhousing on the schoolyard. She might be rude and use crude or less refined slang like a boy. She spits, bleeds, and doesn't care much if she's chipped a nail or two. Now, of course, tvtropes.com is using very modern analogies for the definition, which makes sense. They are speaking to our times and how this is often used as a trope in movies and TV shows and comics, etc. that we watch these days. And I'm pretty sure right now you're that gif of Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at whatever device you're using to watch this video of mine going all, aha! They said prefers to pal around with guys instead of girls. You have been caught in a lie. Eloise loves to hang out with Penelope, and after their brief split, she also hung out with Cressida, both of whom are girls. Liar, liar, Noria's pants on fire. To which I say yes and no. Yes, Eloise does love hanging out with Penelope. They've been friends since they were children. And it is pretty clear that she enjoys Pen's company. But it is only Pen's company she truly enjoys, if we're being honest. Okay, maybe Cressida a bit. Although with the way that friendship crashed and burned, maybe I'm giving Eloise too much credit in that regard. Oh, and her sisters to some degree, yes. But that's it. Her closest bonds are with Penelope, who she often talks to and with, but rarely listens to. Which is why Pen could get away with keeping a secret of being Lady Whistledown for so long, until Eloise finally pays close attention to her words and it clicks for her. And then her brothers as well. Specifically Benedict, who in the show we see them having a ton of heart-to-heart talks, and Colin in the books. Everyone else is merely tolerated to varying degrees. So yes, she does like hanging out with one girl, singular. With the boys, however, is a whole different story. And no, I'm not saying that Eloise loves to spit and roughhouse and is perfectly okay with bleeding in the course of the tumble. Bridgerton is set in a fantasy Regency era after all. She's not going to be spitting about or physically acting like one of the boys. She is a noble woman. There's a limit to what she can and cannot do. Which is what makes it extra obvious for me when the show goes out of its way to imbue her with behavioral qualities and traits that are more present in the Bridgerton men than it is in the women. She has that independent streak. She's dismissive of the interests of the women of the town. She's very obstinate about what she wants. She takes advantage of what is made available to her without thought on exactly who is bearing the burden. She does not desire commitment and therefore has no interest in marriage, which leads to her less sowing her oats and more fighting to live life on her own terms. And most importantly, she is very scared. Now, if we are to take these traits one at a time and see how it correlates with her brothers, you start to see the connection. Sure, Daphne can throw a punch like the boys, but Eloise is the one who craves that independence and desires it, the way it's been given to their brothers. She wants to study, she wants to keep learning and can't, and that is something she chafes at and complains to Benedict about. The fact that because he exists as a man in their world and so can do whatever he wants, study the art without being forced to stop because of an upcoming potential marriage, while she, specifically, not other women mind you, can't. Because Eloise Bridgerton doesn't care about what other women can or cannot do. Her focus is on herself and the fact that she can get that opportunity like her brothers, like the boys, because she happens to be a woman and that grates on her. The fact that Colin can travel the world and have all these fantastic and amazing experiences, and the only way she can step out of England is by tagging along with Francesca, John and Michaela back to Scotland, is something she most likely finds unfair. Happy though she might be at the chance to finally leave home for somewhere much more interesting. Even Gregory, as at season 3, is at Eton. He's studying, he's learning, whilst Eloise is stuck at home. And I understand why she would find that so frustrating. But the thing is, Eloise's desire for that independence and how she advocates for what that independence could look like is so male-centered and aligned with what the boys like and enjoy and prefer that I find it quite interesting and just a tad bit sad. She cannot fathom why other women might want something different from what she desires. She cannot fathom how doing what is expected of the women of her time and doing it brilliantly well is also a mark of the person's dedication and zeal and devotion and talent. Because to her, these feminine interests are lesser. She's blind to what they hold and dismissive of their worth. The boys don't reckon that this talent is something serious or worthy of note. I mean, we all remember season 2 when Anthony was doing his interview for a wife and was dismissive that Margaret Goring, one of the candidates he was interviewing for the wife position, was loyal and dedicated to studying and playing the harp. And don't get me started on how dismissive he was of the ones that spoke multiple languages. But back to Eloise, she channels the boys in how she also gives no attention or recognition to how hard it is for other women to hold this more feminine interest. Because trust me, embroidery might be what the women of the ton spent hours a day on as they waited to be called upon, but embroidery is also very, very hard. Embroidery is art. As someone who spent many of my teenage years with my thumb being pricked by needles and whose stitches always looked like someone was strangling them from the great beyond and they still took the time to flip me the bird moments before they unraveled and crumbled into nothingness, I can tell you categorically that embroidery is so incredibly hard. And so intricately detailed and beautiful. It's stunning. And if you find someone who embroiders by hand in this present age, best believe they're only doing commission pieces, because each stitch is going to be lovingly put together and the end result is something uniquely human made and utterly breathtaking. And sorry, I digress. We're not here to hear me wax lyrical about beautiful stitching. We're here to talk about how Eloise's dismissal of the hearts, often done, partaken, and enjoyed by the women of the ton, isn't the feminist stance she seems to think it is, and is instead very degrading of the work and effort and skill that was put into it. And at the same time, I am strangely not surprised. It is clear from what we see of her in the show that Eloise doesn't consider that true art or something to be taken seriously. She's dismissive of it. Like she thinks it's just brainless things that girls do and enjoy, and her brain can't conceive that it could be anything more. It's the same way she disdains gossip. You know, the way the boys do. She's dismissive of Lady Whistledown and everything she stands for, because to her, it's just silly, idle gossip that doesn't do anything meaningful. And that's why she tries so hard after the truth comes out to convince Penn to give up the column. Because to her, gossip isn't work, not in the true sense of the word. Her mind can't conceive of the scale of what Penelope does and how Lady Whistledown is an intricate weave of the three things that Penelope Featherington does well: observation, writing, and negotiation. And then there's Francesca, Now, like I said previously, it is pretty clear that Eloise is selective of what she would and can be dismissive about. When it's matters pertaining to the things other girls love and enjoy and actively participate or engage in, she waves it off, barely giving it attention or the privilege of her time. But the same isn't the case when it's the boys. We see very clearly that she admires Benedict for being an artist and yet barely spares a word of praise or a glance at Francesca, whose mastery of the pianoforte is exquisite. To her, the arts, which are at the time created mostly by men, warranted more attention, and although she's less tolerant of Benedict's struggle with being good enough when compared to the fact that he could do so much more by virtue of his family and him being a man, she still listens, impatient though she may be at his refusal to suck it up and just do it. And yet every time I rewatch that scene, I wonder if she could possibly fathom that the same impatience with which she dismissed Benedict for not simply taking the bulls by the horn and living the life he wants might be the same way she is viewed by the women around her, who are most likely tired of her constantly harping on the matter of them being, well, women of their time. To her, their interests are chains, binding them to what is expected of them by virtue of them being noble women, and she wants no part of it. And I can just imagine the girls on their own personal time sneering at her and also wanting her to suck it up, especially with how easy she has it. Because trust me, Eloise Bridgerton does have it easy. We see a glimpse of what could be with Cressida and what could almost be with the Featheringtons. Eloise Bridgerton, however, would never have to consider being faced with that future. Her family would never be on the brink of bankruptcy born out of financial mismanagement, and she will never be even threatened with banishment to live with a horrid aunt. Eloise is lucky, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the girls of the town think so too. I mean, even if all she wants is to live her life as a spinster, she has a supportive mother and an even more supportive older brother who most likely would not mind taking care of her as a spinster, should that be what she wants. Eloise's desire to exist on her own terms and her goals and her plans for the future are so similar to Benedict and Colin. She also craves the freedom and independence they both have to explore what the world has to offer without a care in the world. Like her two other brothers, Eloise Bridgerton is quite happy to take what she wants to fulfill her interests and desires without any thought to who takes on the burden of handling things behind the scenes. Eloise, like the other boys in her family, is allowed to be as selfish and carefree and independent as she wants to be, leaving Anthony to cover the bills and sweat the small details. He's the eldest after all and the Viscount. That's what he's meant to do. And Eloise benefits from that, like the boys. She also doesn't desire any sort of true commitment before she meets her one true match, whoever they may be, just like the Bridgerton boys. And before you come and tell me that, oh sure, Anthony was against marriage, but Benedict loves love and Colin, and that's where you trail off, because now you're thinking about it and wondering how anyone can read Colin Bridgerton as not desiring of a true commitment. He was very clearly ready to commit to Marina and marry her, until the news broke that she was expecting another man's child. And even with that, he did tell her that he would have been more than happy to marry her regardless, if only she had been honest with him. So yes, if we look at it on the surface, Colin was ready to marry Marina, but was he truly committed to her? What part of that entire debacle was just him, like his family said, being carried away by the first stirrings of attraction and also wanting to be taken seriously by his family? Especially if he associates marriage with that maturity. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that Colin, wanting desperately to prove that he is old and mature enough to settle down, is followed a season later by him desperate to prove himself as a grown man by almost buying into Jack Featherington's investment scam. And that's then followed in the next season with him once again traveling the world, and this time around returning with tales of all his escapades that show that he is now a man. Clearly, no one will mistake him for anything but the grown man he is after all. So I don't personally see what went down with Marina as him being fully committed to her. He probably would have grown to resent her and vice versa. You know that popular saying, marry in haste, repent at leisure? Yeah, that would be Colin and Marina for sure. And then he will do what he has always done. He will up and leave on one of his travels again, but without her in tow. I don't know about you, but someone with that itch, that constant itch to travel, doesn't really scream commitment, does it? And with what we saw in the first half of season 3 with Colin flitting from one woman to the next, it kind of confirms my point. At least until he realizes Penelope is the one for him, of course. Like I said earlier, the fear of commitment only stands strong until they meet the one, or finally realize who the one is. Know who else this applies to? Benedict Bridgerton. Sure, he's a lover and he talks about having so much love to give and all, but Benedict Bridgerton bails. When it gets too much and too intense, when the emotions get too real and he's expected to commit, he bails. It's what he does. And we see this clearly in season 3. The Bridgerton boys are terrified of true commitment. Eloise Bridgerton is no different. And although she's not sowing her wild oats like we saw Anthony and Benedict and Colin do, she, like them, resists the thoughts and expectations of finding a partner and settling down. And all of this boils down to the fact that Eloise Bridgerton is scared. Scared in a way that neither Daphne nor Francesca are. Sure, Hyacinth doesn't really count in this video for me as she's still too young to show us her thoughts about marriage, but what we've seen so far, she thinks is pretty groovy. But back to Eloise being scared. As I was saying, she's scared in a way that neither Daphne nor Francesca are, but definitely scared in the way Anthony, Benedict, and to some extent Colin are. And that's why I personally see her as one of the boys. She's scared and traumatized from their father's passing, but where Daphne processes her trauma into her being the perfect one so her sisters can have a good standing in society even amidst the tragedy that took their father away from them. Because I'm pretty sure some people most likely had things to say about the fact that Violet Bridgerton became a single parent and Anthony had to be the de facto head of the house. And Daphne doesn't want her sisters to be found wanting in any way, and so she puts her best foot forward to set them up for life, marriage-wise at least. Eloise, on the other hand, has her trauma step out in full force with a desire not to marry at all. No marriage means no kids, which to her means she would not have to repeat their mother's experience. She's scared of being her mother, which is a nice echo to Anthony being scared that the woman he marries might become traumatized like their mother. Benedict, on the other hand, is scared that he is not good enough, that his art would never be good enough, and that he wouldn't leave anything behind on this world that would be a stamp that he existed and made something that would outlive him. Now, I keep saying in these videos that I am not a psychologist, so take everything I say when it comes to the psychobabble with several handfuls of salt. But I think it says something as a trauma response to watching a parent die young, with them being just a little bit older than your current age, that would then motivate you and then drive you into seeking a form of release that would be you stamping your existence onto the world even after you're gone. Just in case you die as young as your parent did. Just my thoughts, of course. And of course, there's Colin's fear, which I already mentioned a bit earlier on in this video. Colin is scared of not being taken seriously, of not being seen as a grown-up. And just as with Anthony and Benedict, I do think it's possible that that fear is also born from their father's passing. There's something about Anthony and Benedict being closer in age so they could carry and share their grief together. Colin is a couple of years younger than the two of them, and I'm pretty sure he's convinced that they still see him as the child he was when their father died. That scene when he returns in season 3 and they are surprised at his muscles and how grown and matured he looks confirms that for me a bit. And of course, there's Eloise. Like the boys, she's also scared. And her fear, just as it does with the boys, serves as a catalyst for that thing the show does to all its Bridgerton men, pre their romance kicking in full time. She, like them, becomes just a tad bit insufferable. And for those who just went, well, it happened with Anthony, yes. It happened with Colin somewhat, but Benedict is the cool one. It will never happen to him. I laugh at your sweet, sweet, blissful ignorance. Don't read An Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn. Just save yourself and hold on to the happy memories of the Benedict you know and love. But if you're an Eloise fan, you can take some probable comfort in the hope that the show might give her the Anthony Bridgerton glow up that will take her from being a character you sometimes want to reach into the screen and shake hard into being a character you root for and absolutely adore. Like the boys. What do you think? Do I have a point? Did I make a modicum of sense? Hit the like button if I did, hit the dislike button if I didn't. Like I always say, the choice is yours with how you choose to interact with my content. If you did enjoy what I had to say though, do drop a comment telling me on a scale of 1, not likely, to 5, hell to the year, how likely is it that the show really would try and revamp Eloise's character and give her the Anthony glow up? Because the way they massacred that poor girl's character over the last couple of seasons, damn. It can't be that hard being a decent friend, is it? But yes, like I said, leave a comment, share this video if you think others should hear what I have to say. It all helps my channel grow and is incredibly supportive of my content. Speaking of support, a huge thank you to my patrons. You all keep me going and help keep the lights on, especially now that I'm reaching the end of what would be my 9-to-5 job in the next couple of months, which means I will soon be without a job or monthly income. So yes, thank you. I literally will not be able to do this without you. If you want to support me on Patreon and can afford it, no amount is too small, really. Do check out the link in the description box. I make new videos 3 times a week. Mondays are for my anime content, Wednesdays are for my movies and TV shows content, and Fridays are for anything else really. Yes, you're seeing this on a Saturday, which is an unusual upload day for me. I mentioned in my community post that work has been kicking my ass in the final dregs of. Clearly, the system wants to get as much as it can out of me before it discards me completely. Oh well. But yes, Saturday posting is an anomaly. Those 3 days are the usual for me, and all my videos drop at 5 p.m. EST on upload days. Whilst you wait for my next video, do check out my The True Role Gossip Place in Bridgerton video. Until next time, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.